Welcome. We are PRISM. And in this episode, we want to touch on a few topics that are appropriate for the current times. Specifically, we'll be exploring some of the ways that so-called negative energy affects individuals and the collective group of humanity at large, and can sometimes steer you into patterns that aren't authentic or beneficial in terms of how you want to express yourself as your creative consciousness in this earth plane in your current bodies. We're calling this explorations of viruses and addiction. Those are two good analogies for how this process works. So all of you ultimately are seeking to express yourselves. You are consciousness embodied in physical vehicles in this earth plane, seeking to express yourself to your highest potential, to be authentic if you'd like, to follow your noble qualities as you create a life which enables you to learn and grow in a multidimensional fashion, in a soul fashion if you'd like, and to come out on the other end of this life having improved from where you started and having fulfilled various aspects of your mission, what might be called the bullet points on your blueprint. So in other words, you're here to do your best, to be your best highest self, to be your highest vibrational self, your most authentic self. But very often, as we all know, this is not what occurs in your lifetime. Somewhere along the line, or maybe several places along the line, we get off track. We find that we're not acting the way that we know we're capable of. We're not adopting all the wonderful, wise sayings and beliefs and ways of life that we've thought that we could and we should do, perhaps even dabbled with doing, but we just can't incorporate it deeply enough to fundamentally change ourselves, our personalities, and our ways of interacting as beings, as incarnated beings. Things get in the way. And when anything gets in the way of you, an individual, expressing your highest and greatest self, and if it's a consistent thing, a pattern, let's say, we call that an addiction. And it's a good way to think of it, we believe, because it's something that's got a hold of you, a pattern that you can't break. Now, when you on the earth plane think of addiction, very often you think of the ones in the news, the ones in your life, perhaps, that you yourself are dealing with, or family and friends. Addiction to substances, addiction to alcohol or drugs or certain behaviors, etc. And these are all, of course, addictions. They're very real. And we don't mean to minimize the impact they've had on your life or anyone that you know. They have very real effects. And that's the point. They have real effects. And when you're addicted to such things, it's quite obvious, either to you or to others. And if you're eventually getting over your addiction, retroactively you can look back and you can go back in your energy field and you can feel where you were and you can retrospectively see how things played out, how you got to where you were, and maybe comprehend and admit that you were in the throes of an addictive pattern. You don't know it at the time very often, do you? And right now you're in the throes of things in your own life, the patterns in your own life that are keeping you from expressing yourself the way you wish to, the way you're fully capable of. And these two are addictions, even if they're not as obvious as having too many drinks, being addicted to drugs, being addicted to sex, or other things that are on the bulletin board that you recognize in your society as the usual quote-unquote kinds of addictions. You can be addicted to low self-esteem, for instance. You can be addicted to ego. You can be addicted to all sorts of thought patterns that undermine you or push you in the wrong direction, but they keep you in a habitual state of acting and reacting, of thinking and turning those thoughts into visualizations, which then become co-creative reality that keep you physically locked into certain actions and behaviors that draw to you more of the same. And if you're not careful, a whole lifetime could be spent or rather misspent, because you went off on a trajectory of an addictive way of thinking, feeling, or being. So we urge you to look in the mirror and to look at the behaviors, the thoughts, the feelings that you've carried around. Some of them may have very specific antecedents. You may be able to point back to moments in time when something happened and say, yes, that is one of the foundational pieces. This is why I adopted this way of being. Others may be more elusive, may be a combination of factors, even inherited factors. It may be something you picked up in your youth, when you're impressionable youth, that you took on from your parents, from your lineage. It could be past life influenced. And all of these possible antecedents and sources are beyond the scope of what we'll talk about tonight. But right now, what we want you to do is to be able to sift through yourself, if you'd like, to examine yourself and see what reoccurring patterns may be inhibiting you from being the best expression of your multidimensional self. We'll give you a hint. Low self-worth, low self-esteem is a pandemic in your human society, as is ego and competitiveness. These different ways of thinking about yourself, about your relationships with others, and about the world at large, how the world operates, are all addictive behaviors, meaning they become autopilot. They're not coming from your inner self. Your inner self, that compass point, the nudges and your intuition that is supposed to be guiding you, that is your more natural multidimensional state, but gets overridden and rewritten by the software of the society that you grow up in, the inherited ideas about what reality is. The true source of navigation, the intuition, the compass, is much more flexible than the rigid worldview that you adopt about how you should behave, who you should be. The inner compass, alternately, is able to navigate. We've talked about this before. It should flow like a river. It should flow around obstacles. It should bring you to where you need to go quite effortlessly and elegantly, ultimately. But it is able to change, as we've talked about also, how preferences can change, how you're not always going to wake up and like the same music and be into the same sort of thing. No one truly is. You adopt this way of thinking about yourself as a convenient outer layer, and it becomes a fixed structure. But if you're not careful, if you're taking on the wrong patterns and thoughts, then you become addicted to them, and they prevent you from allowing this organic, inner flowing navigation system from steering you. So that's what you need to look at. Where are the patterns that are keeping me fixed in a repetitive nature, doing the same thinking and behaving over and over again? Those you should think of as your addictions. You're locked in with those patterns, and you need to break them to give yourself the room and freedom to be able to be flexible. To say, today I love jazz, and tomorrow to say, I hate it today. I don't know why, it's just not doing it for me. And that's okay, you may love jazz again the next day. But your true self isn't as committed as your brain thinks you should be to a certain set of preferences, or personality traits even, or worldviews even. You're meant to move and be flexible as this multidimensional being. Therefore, addictions equal static thinking and static energy in your field that can have physical effects, can create illness, and certainly can steer you into certain behaviors and into certain realities, experiences that you really didn't want. That's the personal level. Now, at the same time, you are being bombarded with this information, and it's at an all-time high. Turn on the news. We've talked about this before. You'll see an influx of negative thinking, trying to habitualize you to patterns of fear, for instance. It's trying, it being this collective, massive effort to control how you think and feel, it is trying to immerse you in this fear-based thinking so that you will be reactive. When you react, you're more likely to fall into patterns, and those patterns can be manipulated. But even if no one outside you is manipulating you, you, through your reactive behavior, will have a more and more limited set of patterns. because you'll be always looking to the outside stimulus to determine how to find your direction, rather than looking at your inner compass and let it organically steer you in the right direction for your greater good. So this kind of fear-based thinking becomes a virus. We're moving to our other analogy. You have a virus around you right now, a very real physical virus, but you have a more dangerous virus, a virus of fear-based thinking, a virus of faulty thinking. Even if it's not fear-based, you inherit other ways of thinking, like scarcity, competition, the necessity of conflict. All of this is simply manufactured by your species and society. It's not real, but it becomes a virus. It gets into your energy field and the energy field of your whole society, and it demands attention. It tries to take over the energy field and rewrite your programming, just like a virus does with your DNA. And it tries to put its stamp on you and say, from now on, we'll be steering you. We, the viral thinking, will be steering how you, the individual, act and react and navigate through life. So you can think of fear-based thinking as a virus, and at the same time it has an addictive quality, because once you get into that energy field, you're stuck in it. You perpetuate it, and you might even find you can't live without it. You can't help but turn on the TV, compulsively taking in more and more negative thinking, because it's ingrained in you. You and the negative energy are now linked by a viral connection, sharing cosmic consciousness DNA, if you'd like, taking on the same programming. And now you've been sucked in to the greater pandemic, the greater body of the virus, if you'd like. And the reason we're painting this picture, using these two different analogies, is we want you to understand how the energy affects you directly, how it makes you dependent upon it, but also how it filters out on a greater macro level throughout society. And it casts a huge net seeking to transform the thinking and the behavior of the entirety of your species to get you all on the same page. Now, there are many sources of this. It's not all coming from the same place or the same people or the same antecedents. Some of it is very historical. It goes back for thousands of years of patterns of thinking. Some of it is newer thinking. And it's coming, as we said, from all directions. It's not monolithic. But because of the way your society operates, the certain basic premises of reality you've all accepted, it's easy to layer on these kinds of mass thoughts, fear-based thoughts, certain ways of looking at the world that then become adopted, absorbed by all of you. Or alternately, think of it as that gets into your energy field and takes you over. And then it transforms you to be part of that program. And you go and replicate more of the same thinking, not only in your own life, but you're generating it and telling people about it. You're sharing the fear. You're sharing the faulty ways of thinking. We're talking about anything negative, anything that prevents you from being compassionate, from being joyful, from feeling multidimensional, from feeling powerful, from feeling transcendent, from feeling high vibrational energy. All of that is where you should be. Anything that stifles it or sets you off course is what we're calling quote-unquote negative energy. And that is what you're being bombarded with and what you're taking on, and you're turning it into personal addictions at times, as well as being caught in the greater flow of the virus of it. All right? Now, we apologize if using two analogies is confusing you, but you must remember, different of you will relate to the different analogies. So we want to give you multiple ways of thinking about it so you can access the greater points that we're embedding in this discussion. And at the same time, we also want you to challenge yourself to think outside the box about a new, potentially uncomfortable way of seeing how you operate in your own life and in the world. So there's various reasons for it. Just absorb the information. That's all we ask in these programs. You take on more than you know, and the energy of this interaction is very powerful in and of its own right. So now that we've set that groundwork, you're not helpless, of course. Anytime you raise your energy up through those standard ways of meditating, of holding high vibrational thoughts, of concentrating and visualizing what you really want, your highest and greatest potential. These are ways to counteract the influence of addiction, of viral thoughts such as fear. And one of the great ways you can protect yourself is to cultivate that feeling. For instance, let's ground it in specifics. People are worried about the literal virus right now that's going around the earth, with good reason, of course. And whatever your attitude about what the virus is or where it came from, if you are questioning how to go into the world and feel safe and protected, then the best way to do it is to cultivate a feeling that you are healthy and safe vis-a-vis this virus. That is truly your best defense. It actually works better than any vaccine. Not that we're saying that you should or shouldn't take a vaccine. That is your personal decision. We're simply saying the tool we're talking about is extremely powerful. It is potent. It's part of your natural defense systems, if you'd like. Having that feeling of health and safety. And we say feeling, we're not saying emotional feeling. We're not saying, oh, I just am not going to get it. That's what I feel. I feel strongly about that. Well, that's all well and good if beneath that feeling is the more important essence of the feeling that we're talking about. And that is a detached certainty, a detached knowingness that you don't have anything to worry about. There's a difference there. A knowingness, like the same way you know you have this right arm. Look at your right arm or your left arm or your leg. You know it's there. No one can talk you out of it. You need that level of knowingness that you are healthy and safe vis-a-vis this virus. And when you have that knowingness, it then creates a belief. Here's a little equation for you to think of. Knowingness, not with emotion, but with certainty, detached certainty, will create your belief. And now that belief will not be your protection. This is very important. The belief in the knowingness doesn't create automatic protection. It creates a clearer navigation system. The belief is your navigation system, not your insurance. Understand? Not your insurance, your navigation system. And if you follow the navigation system, that's your insurance. Therefore, you hold this feeling of health, you go into the world with the belief that comes from that feeling, and that belief then creates a deeper connection to your inner compass, which may steer you away from certain activities or tell you it's okay to do certain activities. So that's different than having blind faith that you can walk into any party or any store and be protected. That may be the case, but only if the knowingness has led you to a deeper connection to your compass, to your intuition that tells you each time that it's safe to go here, there, or elsewhere. Alternately, the compass may say, stay away from that store, stay away from that party. That's not any undermining of your faith. That's you clearly hearing the compass, the whispers of your inner self, following the guidance that allows you to elegantly flow through life, protected from anything that might affect you in terms of this virus. See the difference? That equation builds your compass, and that's what's protecting you. We hope that gives you some practical ways to approach what can be a very alarming time. And then using the information about the bigger picture of how thoughts and beliefs become a pandemic in their own right, not just with the physical pandemic, but with all sorts of ways of thinking you have in your life, about conflict, about natural resources, about who is right and who is wrong, and all sorts of other things, and how that can lead to personal addictions with ways of thinking And also those can come from your antecedents, your earlier self. But as we paint this picture, take it in, take from it what you need, and know that as long as you're working on raising your energy and finding your connection to that inner compass, that is always your best protection, and it's always your best path into finding your way through life in a way that best benefits you for your greatest expression of yourself in this lifetime. Till next time, we love you.